Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking an investigative journey into one of the absolute most fascinating and honestly misunderstood figures in indigenous folklore. We're talking about the Taniwha. For literally centuries, these entities have been woven right into the very fabric of Aotearoa New Zealand's landscape. But what exactly are they, right? I mean, are they just ancient bedtime stories, monsters lurking in the deep, or something far more complex that still holds serious power today? Okay, let's dive into this.
To really grasp the true power of the Taniwha, we actually shouldn't start in the ancient past. We need to start in the year 2002. Just imagine this. You've got a multi-million-dollar modern infrastructure project, the Kurutahi Highway. The plans are fully drawn up, budgets are set, bulldozers are fueled up and ready to go. And then, the whole thing is literally halted. Why? Well, because the proposed route directly threatened the domain of a Taniwha. And this wasn't just some fringe protest either. It became a massive, nationwide controversy that forced secular lawmakers to actually grapple with indigenous spirituality, which immediately begs the question, what kind of entity possesses the sheer power to stop modern machinery dead in its tracks?
And this brilliantly illustrates a massive historical misconception. Comparing these two concepts shows us that the word dragon is an incredibly imprecise label. You see, when European colonizers first arrived, they obviously needed a word for the Taniwha, and they just kind of landed on dragon. But think about the medieval European dragon. It's a creature of fire, of chaos. It's an evil, adversarial monster whose pretty much only narrative purpose is just to be slain by some knight in shining armor. The Māori Taniwha, however, belongs to the water. They have this distinct dual nature. They aren't inherently evil at all. Rather, they're these complex, highly localized entities that very often serve as protective guardians of their specific environments. So calling a Taniwha a dragon completely flattens a deeply sophisticated indigenous concept into a simple fairy tale.
It is absolutely fascinating when you look at where the word itself actually comes from. Linguists can trace it all the way back to the Proto-Oceanic word Taniwha, which simply meant a specific species of shark. As Polynesian navigators moved across the vast Pacific, the word evolved along with them. Over in Tongan and Samoan, it came to mean a really large, dangerous shark. But when Maori ancestors settled in New Zealand, the concept expanded. The biological reality of a very dangerous predator in the water totally transformed into a much broader supernatural category encompassing water spirits and guardians. It's just an incredible example of how a very real physical threat evolves into rich cosmology over centuries.
Which brings us directly to a foundational concept within Te Ao Māori, or the Māori worldview, and that is kaitiaki. Taniwha are intimately tied to this core idea of being protective guardians. So they aren't alien monsters attacking randomly out of nowhere. They are deeply embedded within kinship networks and tribal histories. Some Taniwha are actually understood to be transformed ancestors. As kaitiaki, they actively watch over specific people, physical places, and sacred sites. They really represent the ideal reciprocal relationship between humans and nature. Basically, if you respect the environment, the guardian protects you.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the actual science behind the history. We know there's no empirical evidence for supernatural water spirits, sure, but the biological basis for Taniwha sightings is incredibly strong. I mean, we're talking about great white sharks, which the Maori literally call Mongo Taniwha, or shark Taniwha. We're also looking at New Zealand's long-finned eels, which can grow to over 1.5 meters long. There's even a documented case from 1907 in a Maori language newspaper detailing a sighting in Waimarama of a Taniwha with a dog-like head and fur. And the newspaper's editor astutely pointed out that this terrifying monster was almost certainly just a lost native fur seal.
But get this, not all Taniwha were animals. Some were actually recorded as rakau tipua, which translates to enchanted logs. The famous ethnographer Elsden Best recorded this utterly fascinating mini-narrative of Tutawa. This was an enchanted log located in Waikaremoana. Imagine a massive piece of driftwood moving mysteriously against the river's current, all while emitting an eerie whistling sound that best compared to the whistling of the wind. This is a perfect example of how unusual yet entirely natural phenomena, like driftwood behaving strangely in complex hydrological currents, were interpreted right through the supernatural framework of the Taniwha.
However, we absolutely cannot ignore their darker half, because while they are guardians, Taniwha are also deeply feared. Ethnographer A.W. Reed actually documented the story of the Taniwha Hotupuku, which was a truly terrifying entity in the Rotorua district. When this creature was finally defeated and its belly was cut open, the contents made for a morbid but completely captivating list. We're talking undigested men, women, and children, assorted body parts, weapons, ornaments, This really highlights the Taniwha's role in the archetype of the devourer. It's that destructive, terrifying aspect of nature that can just consume human life without a second thought.
But it's crucial to understand that these monster narratives weren't just told for cheap thrills, they actually enforced social order. This is heavily tied to the concept of tapu, which essentially means sacred restrictions or prohibitions. You see, Taniwha didn't just eat anyone randomly. They specifically preyed upon those who violated tapu, trespassed on enemy territory, or polluted sacred sites. So if you didn't recite the appropriate charms or leave an offering, which was often just a simple green twig when passing a known Taniwha lair, well, you were inviting disaster. The monster myth was actually a strict moral and social code keeping people in line.
Let's move to Tani and see how this builds into an incredibly practical application in the physical world. Just look at where Taniwha supposedly lived: whirlpools, deep, treacherous river bends, and completely submerged caves. These are objectively highly dangerous geological and hydrological hazards. So by labeling these deadly locations as Taniwha lairs, Maori ancestors created a brilliant indigenous risk management system. It was literally an environmental warning system encoded into narrative folklore. Think about it. You don't really need to understand the complex physics of a deadly undertow if you already know a monstrous guardian lives in that bend of the river and will drag you under. It saved lives.
There's actually a fascinating term for this in modern cognitive science. It's called hyperactive agency detection. As humans, our brains are literally hardwired to perceive intentional agency in ambiguous environments as a survival mechanism. If we see unusual water movements or hear a strange whistling sound from a log in the fog, our brains naturally interpret that as an intentional living force. We assume it's alive rather than just the wind or the current. The Taniwha perfectly maps onto this deeply ingrained Suman psychological trait.
Through all of this, across literal centuries of immense change, the Taniwha has proven incredibly resilient. Originating with the Polynesian migrations way back around 1250 to 1300, the belief system was deeply ingrained by the time European colonizers arrived in the 1800s. And while missionaries tried hard to suppress these traditions or just mistakenly conflated them with European dragons, the Taniwha survived. Jump to 1986, and Robin Kahiwa's famous picture book brought them right into the modern popular culture mainstream. And by 2002, with that Karatahi highway case we mentioned earlier, we see them stepping firmly into 21st century legal and political reality.
Now, this modern reality has definitely created some significant friction. When massive infrastructure projects are delayed by unseen water spirits, you inevitably get a clash of worldviews. This quote from former New Zealand Prime Minister John Key really captures the secular governance perspective. When he was asked about his belief in Taniwha, he stated quite neutrally that while he deeply respects people's spiritual beliefs, he isn't a believer himself. It perfectly encapsulates the administrative hurdle of trying to build modern infrastructure in a landscape that is so deeply steeped in indigenous spirituality.
Right on the other side of that exact same debate is the academic and philosophical counterargument, articulated here by philosopher Jake Kingsbury in 2022. He argues that public institutions shouldn't just wave away or dismiss these beliefs. To many, these are genuine spiritual commitments that demand to be taken seriously in public policy, rather than just treated as mere cultural curiosities to be indulged or paid off. This really captures the heart of an ongoing legal and ethical debate over exactly how secular societies can accommodate deeply held indigenous beliefs.
So, the crucial point is that belief in the Taniwha isn't a monolith, not even within Māori communities today. Taho Potiki, a highly respected former Ngai Tahu CEO with a more secular view, acknowledged that while he might not personally believe in literal monsters, the traditional worldview allowed for Taniwha because they explained descent lines from the gods. It shows us that whether they are viewed as literal physical beings or as powerful cultural metaphors, the Taniwha remains a vital, living link to ancestry. It's a profound framework for environmental stewardship and absolutely a core pillar of identity.
We've seen how a single word for a shark evolved into a protector, a monstrous devourer, an early warning system, and eventually even a modern legal challenge. The Taniwha proves that folklore is never, ever just a story. It's a mirror, one that reflects exactly how a culture survives, respects, and navigates the awesome power of the natural world. Next time you look at a treacherous river bend or the dark depths of a harbor, ask yourself, what unseen guardians might be looking back? I really hope this explainer has left you looking at the water just a little bit differently.